The T-90 is a modern-day tank. Its technical and combat capabilities make it one of the world's best. A restricted access plant in the city of Nizhny Tagil in the Urals is the only manufacturer of the T-90 in Russia. Each year, new tanks are tried out at a special proving ground. The T-90 is a descendant of the T-34, the legendary World War II-era tank. One of the last operating tanks of this kind is still officially in the service of the plant's guards. It also performs ceremonial duties in the town's streets during celebrations marking the victory over fascist Germany. It was the T-34 that played a key role in the Battle of Kursk, the biggest tank battle of the Second World War. When British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was summarizing the outcome of World War II at a press conference in 1945, he singled out three types of weapons that had shown the best performance during the war: the British artillery, the German Messerschmitt aircraft, and the Russian T-34 tank. He said he understood how the first two weapons had been made, but he couldn't possibly understand how the T-34 had come into being.
The German headquarters failed to forecast the T-34 tank appearance. That was an evident blunder of the German intelligence. Of course, it should be considered that it was extremely difficult to arrange intelligence against the Soviet Union, as it was a closed state. On the other hand, Germans failed because of their pride and vanity. After swift victories in Europe, they trusted their forces so much they couldn't even suggest that such a fighting machine as the T-34 would appear in the Soviet Union.
Russian tank crews referred to the T-34 as their workhorse. This combat vehicle has been recognized as the best medium tank of World War II on the basis of three key characteristics: its firepower, its armor protection, and its mobility. The T-34 was designed at a plant in the city of Kharkov by Mikhail Koshkin. In 1941, after Hitler's Germany violated the Non-Aggression Pact and attacked the Soviet Union, the plant was moved east to Nizhny Tagil with great urgency. On the eve of the Battle of Kursk, in 1943, a trainload of T-34s was dispatched to the front on a daily basis, some 1,000 tanks in a month.
Germans knew that they could not produce as many tanks as their foe. Therefore, they focused not on the quantity, but on the quality. Thus, the German tanks, Tiger and the Panther, tanks of a new class, were better than the T-34. But it took much longer to produce such tanks than the T-34 tank.
The world's first tank conveyor belt was launched in the Soviet Union in mid-1943 at a top-secret plant known only as Number 183. Wartime conditions then were especially hard. One shift lasted for 12 hours, and work continued around the clock.
Life was very hard indeed. Some people even died of hunger. In wintertime, most people preferred to stay at the plant around the clock. So we spent the night at the plant. Once one of the workers curled up next to a pile of warm cinder. We thought he was asleep, but when we checked, he was already dead.
Vasily Yunashev survived the war. During those years, he worked in the factory as an assistant steelmaker.
I showed up at the factory. I had no special skills. I hadn't been trained anywhere.
Vasily often visits the college that trains workers for the tank plant. Today's students even have the chance to feel like tank commanders by using special simulators. They get all the necessary skills after 5 years of training. But back in 1943, everybody was welcome to work at the plant, with or without education, regardless of age. At that time, workers studied tank design, examining real-life German combat tanks.
Sometimes, captured German tanks were brought to our plant. We were young then. We examined them and even rotated the turret in this simple manner.
By early 1943, new German tanks had all but erased the advantages of the T-34. The Tiger heavy tank was expected to be the main striking force in the Battle of Kursk. The Tiger's driver mechanic had no difficulty guiding the tank using his steering wheel with the booster. The tank was convenient and comfortable for combat. By contrast, it took both the commander and the mechanic to steer a Russian T-34, and they did it employing a far less sophisticated method.
What kind of method was it? Well, you see, the commanding officer had only what he saw through the slit to go by. So, if he wanted the tank to turn to the left, he hit the driver mechanic on the left shoulder. Whack! The driver mechanic knew he should turn to the left. It's like being on horseback. When the commander wanted the tank to turn to the right, he hit the mechanic on the right shoulder.
The T-34 had good speed and maneuverability and required no overly complicated skills to assemble. But it couldn't compete in open battle with the Tiger heavy tank. A Tiger could hit any Soviet tank of the day from a distance of 2,000 meters. But Soviet tank crews only had a range of 500 to 600 meters.
We asked ourselves how we could cheat the Germans. In some instances, a T-34 would suddenly rush to the right at full speed. But, as the German Tiger slowly turned around to allow its gun to take aim, another T-34 would rush to the Tiger and hit it from the other side.
The Tiger was mainly designed to break through enemy defenses. This rare footage shows the German army's advance in the Kursk Bulge. Tigers moved slowly at the head of the offensive. The mere look of Tigers had a strong psychological effect on Russian troops.
You can see a big hulk of a tank approaching you. There are machine gunners on top. Other machine gunners are trailing behind. If we let them through, we'll be destroyed. We're not supposed to abandon the line of defense. Anything but a retreat. Die okay, but hold your positions.
World War II veteran Vasily Shevtsov lives in the village of Prokhorovka near Kursk. In 1943, he was 19 years old. On July 4th, he and other soldiers from his battalion were waiting for their first taste of combat in this ravine. The men had reason to believe they were unlikely to survive the battle.
We were told to load our weapons and replenish ammunition. Secure everything to your body to give you maximum mobility. We were told to leave our personal belongings behind. You will no longer need them, they said.
The Wehrmacht was also making thorough preparations for the battle. Tank units were reinforced with specially trained cadets. Karl Gelsdorf was one of them. This is a photograph from his private archive. As part of a detached attack company of 22 Tiger tanks, he first arrived at the Eastern Front in early July 1943. A few days before the battle, his company received orders to immediately abandon their deployment position, a small village near Kursk.
When we were leaving, junior officers were rummaging through houses where we had lodged, destroying all traces of our presence, bits of documents and even paper left over from letter writing. Moreover, we learned shortly before the battle that the Soviet command knew not only all our deployment areas, but also our plans for an offensive. We reasoned then, why get embroiled at all?
The Battle of Kursk held great importance for the German High Command. After a failed advance on Moscow and having suffered complete defeat at Stalingrad, the Wehrmacht was keen to take revenge. They hoped a successful operation at Kursk might again give them the strategic upper hand. That would allow the Germans to launch yet another offensive against Moscow and strike in the direction of the Caucasus. Hitler was well aware of the importance of the battle forthcoming. An excerpt from Hitler's order of July 4th, 1943.
Today, you're embarking on a major offensive operation, whose outcome may decide the course of the war. Your victory must reinforce the certainty everywhere in the world that any resistance to the German army will be pointless in the end. You must know that everything may depend on the success of this combat.
The Kursk bulge took shape on the Eastern Front in the course of the fighting in spring 1943. It posed a great threat to the German Wehrmacht. Soviet troops might launch a major offensive from that springboard, and after a long period of hesitation, the German command decided to forestall the Red Army. The plan was to cut Russian troops off from the main forces to pave the way for wider operations. Ivan Kulabukhov turned 13 on the eve of the Battle of Kursk. The Germans had occupied the village of Rzhaviets, where he lived with his parents. Just before the battle broke out, Ivan and other boys took up positions nearby to act as scouts watching the movements of German and Russian troops.
Our T-34 tanks came from there. Some 30 tanks altogether. There was no advance intelligence. The Germans had what we called their menagerie, tigers, panthers, and Ferdinands in the village.
It was here that T-34 tanks came under massive shelling. They were forced to pull back. One of the Soviet tanks hid in a small gully by the roadside. Ivan noticed the spot, but couldn't make it to the tank before massive bombing and shelling set in from all sides.
It was hell, sheer hell, an inferno. There's no other word for it. There were shell fragments all over the place. Walking there was out of the question. The jagged shrapnel was very sharp. It would cut you really deep.
Through early July 1943, military action at the Kursk Bulge was mostly limited to small air raids or ground force reconnaissance missions. Ivan Kulabukhov witnessed one of these local clashes. He set out to look for the T-34 4 days after the Russian tanks came under fire. The air was literally scorching with heat and tension. Soviet troops were anticipating an offensive operation, but the Germans were still biding their time. By July 4th, 1943, the war's longest lull had already lasted 100 days.